Hello, everybody, and welcome to episode 23 of HR Breakfast USA. And as ever, I am joined with my fabulous hosts, Callie.
Hello.
And Toby.
Yo!
I love it. Just never know what's going to come out of Toby's mouth. It's just always just as much of a surprise to us as it is for you, everybody. And I'm also delighted to say that thanks to some very clever people in our team, Callie, we are now available on Spotify, I believe.
Yeah. So we're working on getting back catalog up on there, but you can find one episode as of now. So keep an eye out.
See, we're coming of age, people, coming of age. And as ever, we are tackling a meaty topic. And today it's training, the go-to band-aid to cover up the real problems in your organization. And it's funny, when we first started talking about this and I first saw this in terms of today's session being a coach, I was, well, of course coaching works. And then when you look at what's behind it, it's let's just throw some money at it and make this problem go away. And I think that's what we're here to talk about, those that want to do it as a tick box exercise, which then took me back to, gosh, must have been about 10 years ago. And I remember when we first started talking about diversity and inclusion, and I went to an event in London, and it was very clear that this event was simply a tick box exercise and something that they could say, we've done that. We've also gone above and beyond, because what do you know? We've invited about 50 lovely people for an hour, give them a few drinks and cocktails and done it. So what more do you want us to do? Now, that's a tale I'm sure that we've all heard. But when we talk about covering up the Band-Aid, let's look at what we're seeing the most right now and why that's happening. Callie, when you're out and about, because I know that, you know, you are brilliant at your biz dev and your role and networking and all that good stuff, what are you hearing about why people, those in leadership positions who are less enlightened, are covering things up rather than getting to the root of it?
Well, so it's funny because I interpreted the prompt a little bit different. And I think here's the fun of us like not talking about it until we all come together. This was Toby's brilliant idea. I interpreted it more as like, oh, this is a training problem. Like you just use it as that Band-Aid to say, we didn't plan for this. We didn't utilize our team in the appropriate way. But then afterward, we're going to explain away whatever blunder happened by saying like, oh, the training process was flawed. This wasn't covered here. And then it becomes that easy scapegoat really for why we were ineffective. So I sort of interpret it as this like chicken or the egg sort of situation where if something goes really well, then we're all ready to say, oh, it's because of the role that I played. But if it goes poorly, we're kind of right in the wings, ready to say, oh, well, I guess we'll develop a training program and we'll make sure this doesn't happen again next time, versus acknowledging that it's really more about how you instill the desire, the ability, the confidence to really just be enabled to take that action that's necessary and needed at the moment when it's needed, and to support our teams in those complete sort of ways.
Interesting. So shall we talk to the man himself? Toby, tell us more. What was your thought behind this?
Apparently it was my really good idea. I can't remember suggesting. I think I wrote a long list at the beginning of the year. I'm gonna try something new here. I'm gonna share my screen. We've not done this before on HR Breakfast USA, so let's hope it works. So, there you go. So my shared screen is now in the green room, so now Callie should be able to bring it onto the main stage.
I thought I ruined it.
There we go. Awesome. We did it. Look at that. Technology working for us. So if you look up above, you can see I've just Googled most popular training topics. So this was just based on what you said, Sam, that you talked about diversity or DE&I. Can be quite a tick box exercise in terms of training. Now, and to what you said, Callie, about it being kind of the reason why something didn't work rather than it did. Now, if we look at some of these topics here, diversity is a really good one, right? In that's not really anything, that's systemic and organizational change. Diversity, that's nothing to do with training. You can't train someone to be more diverse. That doesn't really work. And it's the same with time management, collaboration. These things are systemic issues within inside an organization that require process, people, systems to make them work. But usually the go-to answer is, we'll make a training course. The training course will affect that. We won't actually affect any change inside the organization. We'll create a training course and hope that fixes it. And it just doesn't, right? It might do in its small amounts, but what often happens is you kind of just get I'm going to stop sharing my screen. The kind of sugar rush, I guess, that you get like a peak in change, and then it just tails off because it doesn't create lasting change. And it's one of the reasons why we at Freeformers have moved away from designing 1 to 2 day training programs, because they're quite ineffective because they don't create lasting change. What was a 2 day presentation skills workshop is now a 4-5 week program where there are smaller sessions every week with tasks in between to make that happen. Now, if anybody out there watching is thinking about signing up to a 1 day or 2 day presentation training skills program, don't do it, because it will not affect the change you want it to do. And this is exactly the same across any organization, right? That it has to be well thought through. And generally, in my experience, training isn't actually that well thought through, because it's even if I go back to the very start of my career where I designed some awesome workshops, they were all 2 or 1 day workshops. They were really good, but the only reason that they were good, or I thought they were good, because they were designed with this confine of what people were expecting. And it's like, well, I've kind of wasted 7 years of my career here designing 2 day workshops when I haven't even questioned whether 2 day workshops are the right thing to start with. And I suppose that's the point, right? That question whether a 2 day workshop is the right thing, yes, but questioning whether training is really the right answer. And that's what no one really does. Even people who say they practice human-centered design in learning and development or training don't do it, because you're still in the bucket of learning and development, right? Unless you are really well networked and you have a really strong stakeholder network within an organization, you're still only affecting that change in a small slither. So the whole thing's a waste of
time. So this is Toby. So I'm just going to switch the lights out and I'll leave stage.
Yeah, we're done. 8 minutes. World record on us solving these topics.
There you go. Don't do it, people. But there is an element to this that's even bigger than what Toby said, and it's just got me thinking, which is, and I drive Toby and Callie mad with this question, which is, what is the outcome you're looking to achieve with this? So, what are you looking to achieve with that? So when it's the question of, is it training, is it coaching, does it come under the L&D budget, does it need to be a day, does it need to be 2? Forget all of that, and what is the outcome you are looking to achieve from this? Because I agree with what Toby's saying in terms of that, a little bit of coaching and then embedding that learning and that coaching to do it your way, on a way that is right for the organization, and taking it to the next step. I know I keep referring it to the whole time, but there's so much in Kaizen and what it is and how it's helped the evolution of organizations. Yes, that bottle in the corner with a car worker might go from half a litre to 1 litre, but the outcome of that is they're hydrated for longer, they don't have to leave the floor, they've been listened to. The outcome and productivity from that is huge. Now, is that part of training? I would say yes, because they've been trained to learn how to give that feedback and suggest something that's going to be of benefit both for them and the organization in such a way that they'll be heard. So do we actually need to look at the definition of training before we ask whether it's a go-to Band-Aid or not?
No, just need to stop doing it.
Stop doing
it. Take it away. Take it away and see what happens. Take it away and see what happens. I don't know why I just keep repeating everything I'm saying twice. But just take it away and see what happens. If you don't do it, see what happens.
Just done it again.
Yeah, I'm just going to keep saying it until one of you two step in. But like, if that didn't happen, I'm saying a fourth time, if it didn't happen, well, we'd have like if it just do that. That's the one thing.
But does it go back to your point, Toby? Are you asking that you take away the tick box training, or are you suggesting that we take away training full stop?
Take it away full stop. See what happens. Because
Okay.
you'll be surprised that actually not a lot changes. Unless it's compliance training, and then you're getting the shit. I'll swear you'll get in the shit because you'll have done something that that you legally should have. So don't get rid of legally compliant training. How can you do it? How can you take it? I mean, like, so not take the thing away, but like just the element of even it as an option, take it away as an option. Emily, is what I would suggest, is that, like, don't even have it on the table to start with. Oh, we've got this challenge. Cool. Well, we don't have a training department or an L&D department. How would we try and affect this change? Start with that mindset, and don't actually get rid of your L&D. Maybe do actually get rid of the L&D department, but you know, see what happens. Spice it up a little bit.
I mean, yeah, I kind of felt a little bit nervous inside because it kind of wiped out quite a few of us there. But the other side of that is it goes back to the outcome piece, doesn't it? So surely when you're dealing with that and you're avoiding the band-aid is the go-to, is the training. Surely the question is, what are we trying to achieve here? You know what?
Well, so just play with the language there, right? And I know Emily asked a follow-up question as well, which we need to answer. But a band-aid is the answer, right? So this is going to be a little bit gross, but like if I had a knife and I kept cutting you, and we kept putting band-aids over it, what would you tell me to do? You wouldn't say, "Can I have some more band-aids, please?" You'd say, "Can you stop cutting me, please? Because I'm requiring all these band-aids." So
you're very polite about someone physically accosting you.
Yeah. Please, just it's vaguely annoying, but this is where Bill Gates obviously thinks differently, right? With the malaria issue that he fixed, or it was in the process of fixing, isn't necessarily about the creation and distribution of vaccines. It was actually about gang warfare that was stopping the vaccines getting to the right place. Like, you think differently about actually what the challenge is. So it can't be that retrospective thing, or that thing that you think, oh, I'm going to apply the band-aid and fix this. It's like, no, take a step back. What is the actual problem?
Yes. So I think we're violently agreeing on that point. It's, you understand what that issue is before you try and fix it. Okay. So going back to getting to the root cause of that problem, and we're going to get away from malaria and slashing people and putting band-aids on. I think that might be a bad idea and part to go for the next 15 minutes. But on that, if we are now looking at what we can do and do differently, how do we approach training in a way that's going to have the impact that organizations, I'm going to say require rather than need, because I think there's a difference with the workforce moving so fast and individuals' needs changing so quickly. It is hard for them to keep up. I'm not making excuses. I mean, it's hard in a small team that I've got to be able to keep up with what everyone wants and what everyone thinks, let alone with 3,000 people. So how can organizations, here's my question, how can organizations stay relevant and have impact with their training? And I really don't mind who wants to go first there.
I haven't talked in a while. So I feel like it's becoming the new platitude, right? Like the new word that has no meaning is psychological safety, because we talk about it too much in human resources, whatever, right? What the hell is psychological safety? That's what we have to figure out, right? Is what do we do in our teams to build a system where people are comfortable saying, we have to create a solution to this specific problem, especially without necessarily saying, I have an idea of what we do here, right? We need people to freely be able to comfortably call out whatever that barrier is that we would normally create a new training around to solve this problem, right? Because if we create teams where people feel like they can bring problems forward, they can say what it is in an open, clear way without feeling like everyone's going to call them an idiot or get mad at them because there's this thing that people don't want to solve or they don't want to talk about. That to me is how you figure out what the path forward is. Because if you don't have an environment where people can raise the red flag and say, we've got to work together to fix this, then you're only going to know about 60 to 70% of the problem maximum without that level of confidence in kind of addressing what it is. Or you're finding out too late in the game and now you've got a ton of cleanup work versus saying, this is not the right approach to be able to do this because of XYZ. We've got to adapt and do this in a more efficient way.
I really like that. That's 60 to 70% piece, Callie, that you talked about really hit home for me, because there's such a large proportion of risk that an organization, whether consciously or subconsciously, is choosing to ignore.
Yeah. Or you're just ignoring the fact that you don't have all of the context or information, especially if you're looking down from above.
Okay.
It's just reality.
Callie, do you think this is people who are just so used to doing things a certain way that their brains trained, so they're just continuing to do it that way? They don't actually mean any malice or spite out of it. It's just, do you know what? We've always done it this way, rather than something lazy, that they just don't know any better. And by the way, I'm not making excuses for these people. I'm trying to understand why they continue to do this.
I think that the barriers are different at each level, right? And depending on the context around it. I think a lot of times it's just maybe you don't know what you don't know because you're not close enough to the problem, or you're not close enough to the team, or you don't understand the toxic dynamics at play within that particular team because no one's comfortable talking about them. But from a leadership standpoint, even if you sort of rose through the ranks and got to that role, it still took X amount of time to get there, right? Or you built the company up, and it's been 20 years since you've been directly an XYZ component of it. We've sort of got this mindset that, oh, we know what's going on because we've been there and we've done that. But if we're not stopping to think about, yeah, but it looked a lot different when we were doing that, or it's a lot different when it's 1 to 3 people doing it versus an entire team of 15 to 20 people doing it, we just don't have the most up-to-date context. So I don't think it's always a malicious thing. I think, one, we get busy with our own problems. We have our own agendas. We're not seeing the problem through the same lens, or it looked different when we sat in that seat. I think there's a lot of different reasons for it. But if we're not creating a system where the information can flow freely through different levels, or we're creating unnecessary levels, then we're always going to have a problem with filtering between what's actually going on and what we think is going on.
I love that. Toby, Callie made a really good point there about the information flowing freely and how organizations can be supported in doing that. Now, I know that you've been working on areas of this, and how do we make that happen within an organization to make sure that they're making more informed decisions? What are your thoughts in that point specifically about how that information should be flowing more freely and how they go about making that happen?
Big question. So
It is a big question.
that's why we're here.
By the way.
We're here to answer the big questions. Oh, we've got 10 minutes on the clock. Let's go. I would propose that I don't burn through all the 10 minutes just with me talking, because if you give me that grace, then I'm going to take it. The first observation is companies I've worked with that are 100 people big. don't have a training on L&D team. So there's something there that kind of goes, well, they've kind of figured out a way to develop and get their people to perform without it. It's only until you get to a certain size that they go, okay, we need a training team.
Mm-hmm.
And that's where you kind of have to link probably the hierarchical nature of the structure of a company to whether it needs training as a solution or not. Because what happens within a company of 100 people, there are 100 nodes, and there's a limited amount of connections between those nodes. If there's then 1,000 people, there's way more connection points between all those nodes, and everything becomes a lot more difficult. So that's just the nature of the beast of adding in more nodes, adding more people into it to make a mess of stuff. So you have to build in a systemic approach to do it. And the HR approach, and we've talked about this before, is the pulse survey. I laugh saying it because it's ridiculous. But there are, well, there's in my head, there's the Venn diagram of things that need to happen, right? Is you need the human information, thought, feeling, the thinking, feeling, behavioral stuff of what the people are doing. And that's human-centered design, right? Go right back to the beginning of the double diamond and figure this stuff out. And build that into your working processes, because if it isn't in a company of 100 people or smaller, it's probably built into the processes by accident, that we figure out these problems by accident, and we communicate about them because we're so small and we're able to do that. You get bigger and you're not able to do that. So how do you build scalability in human-centered design as a BAU practice for non-corporate wackos? That's business as usual. Trying to de-business myself in terms of business talk. Then there's to have a solid approach to data, which again most organizations don't have with their people. Even the smaller companies just don't have that sensible approach to evaluate it. And then the second one is like, just probably qualify yourself in some sort of other mindset other than training or learning, and kind of go, well, behavioral economics is the one I started on a journey on like 6 or 7 years ago. Where I'm like, well, actually, if I started out with what's the behavioral economic solution to this, you design employee experience differently to affect a change in behavior. And that's way more.
Because you're taking into account behavior versus best case scenario.
Absolutely. Like, and you do away with a load of assumptions. You're dealing with matter of fact. And it's like, well, yeah. I think we talked about the conversation with Rocket, right? Okay, so we got ketchup. We're throwing away ketchup packets left, right, and center. We're losing money on throwing away these ketchup packets. Cool. Let's do a half-day workshop that trains people on the history of ketchup packets, why ketchup packets are important, how much money we could save based on that. Or do what Rocket did and just place a load of coins everywhere and get people to pick them up to prime them to think differently about their environment, their surroundings, and how they interact with the world around them. Much more effective, much more interesting to hear on a live stream as well. So you kind of just have to think differently. And if you're set up, if you are hired into a large organization with training or learning and development above your name, you're kind of already swimming upstream because you've been placed in a box that doesn't able to do that. And if you're in what is probably going to be a large organization, as we've just discussed, if you're in those boxes, you're not going to come out of those boxes and try and get information to flow in all those different places. Not because you don't want to as an individual, but the hierarchical silo structure of the company doesn't enable you to do that. So, restructure your company. That's probably the short answer.
But there's so much in that, and I agree with Callie. It's so much of this is about behaviors, isn't it? And when we look at how we are as a human being, with over 90%, 95 plus in some cases of us being pure habit by the time we're 30s plus anyway, is it any wonder that we're seeing so much of this stuck in a place where it needs to get better? It can get better. It is not about fear. So much of it is about behavior and just that drive to habit. So much of this is habit. It's hard to ask these difficult questions. Okay, so if this is where we want to get to, is the way we've been doing it thus far now fit for purpose? if it's not, what does that look like? And that's the bit that really starts to get them. Toby, to your bit about the behavioural economics. Callie, your bit about the systems and having the appropriate systems in the right place at the right time is then mind-blowing for them. I think for us on this call, we'd probably do stuff that we've never done before, but we'd be comfortable with it because we'd give it a go.
Mm-hmm.
Right? Because what's the worst that can happen? What's the worst that can happen? It doesn't work and we try something else.
Well, and we breed that out of people, right? You know, from, I mean, huge problems with US schools for sure, where they talk about every 5-year-old has the brain of a genius when you look at how they can problem solve and come up with creative solutions. And everything that we do in a structured environment, whether it's corporate America, schools, whatever, is teaching people compliance. And so you've got, you know, all three of us who have very entrepreneurial, let's take calculated risk mindsets.
Oh yeah.
That's where innovation comes from, and the ability to adapt and solve new challenges really is from that sort of desire. We've got to make it comfortable and confident for people to think in that mindset rather than I need to take the most calculated approach possible for self-preservation.
And I think that is so well put, because it's so often these are people in leadership roles who are still employees. They still have stakeholders all around them 360, both reporting into them, that they've got to report into, their peers and everything else. And Callie, I think that a lot of that has got to be taken into account here, their risk profile. I mean, I know, you know, my risk level is probably the equivalent of jumping out of an aeroplane with a dodgy parachute, right? You know, I'll take the risk. Let's see if I land. It'll all be good. But I've got that insane and outrageous confidence. There's a difference between confidence and arrogance and just sheer joy in the world I live in. I know Toby's laughing. He's only got a few hours with me in the plane coming up in October. What could possibly go wrong? I was in a flight simulator today, by the way, Toby. I nearly broke it. Can I just
Great. I'm looking forward to this.
So some of you may have seen that, you know, I'm getting more involved in my husband's world, and, you know, so I do a few things. So today I was taken up in an aeroplane in his like equivalent of the KC-135 that was his as boom operator. We went up. So, you know, Sam, over to you now, land it. Wasn't a problem. Sam, over to you now, take it off. And the pilot had to stop it automatically because, okay, I took off, slightly dodgy takeoff, but then I banked too much. And when we were leaving, my husband said, yeah, if you carried on doing that, you might have broken the simulator, just saying. So, anywho, but that's down to risk and just my way of doing things.
But I think, as every thought leader, sports person may tell you, is like, people learn from failure. Failure is the biggest point of learning in anyone's life.
Yes.
And that's what kids do. Kids test and probe the environment around them. Burn yourself, hurt yourself, fall off something. You've got to do that to learn that it's not the case. But then, as you both said, right, you kind of, most people are conditioned not to fail because there's something bad is going to happen. And world of work is no different. You, as an employer, if you're watching, are no different. Your people are scared to make mistakes inside your company, and it's your fault, as well as the system of work of other companies they've worked for. But you, Callie, you've not said not given enough psychological safety to make failure a positive thing that you can learn from. So again, get rid of the training or learning and development team and just allow people to fail, celebrate failure. I remember I worked with a chap called Greg, who probably isn't watching, but Greg, the thing he tried to do when I was working with him, he tried to create the system of failure in the company. He's like, I want people to be really happy about failure. I want us to get up every week and talk about it and celebrate it. It never took off, but there's got to be that thing where you allow those people to fail, for sure.
Yeah. Toby, have you got anything else you want to add in sort of that wrap up there? Because I thought you summed it up rather beautifully myself.
No, just fail. Get rid of training, do more failure.
Love it. Callie, what are your conclusions today, please?
Oh man, this has been a great conversation. Thanks to everyone who jumped in. I think, yeah, we just need to look at training differently and think about how we create an environment that allows for adaptation versus overly prescribing a solution.
Yeah. I love that. And for me, that, you know, there was the standouts were, Callie, what you said about the 60 to 70%, they were only looking at that, the whole piece around behavioral economics, and let's start to look at this slightly differently. And then the systems and processes, the processes in which we look at what we need to do when we're implementing training. Thank you, as Toby and Callie have said, for all of your input today. This has been a great session. Thank you, everyone, for your continued questions and input every week. Keep sending us what you'd like us to talk about. We will absolutely annihilate it every week and give it our take, as you can tell, and we'll have fun along the way. But more than anything, and in all sincerity, we hope you leave with inspiration. Thank you, everyone, and we'll see you next week.
Thank
Bye.
you.